All right, guys, we've got a very special episode today, especially for all you vegans out there. I know a lot of you are always requesting more vegan recipes, and I think I have the perfect person. This is Celine.
Hi.
From Celine Squared, your Instagram, and Celine Eats. Celine Eats is your blog, correct?
Yes, it is.
So what do you cook on your platforms?
I cook all plant-based stuff. All my recipes, maybe 99% of the recipes on my blog are plant-based.
Okay, nice. And what got you into plant-based stuff?
A couple of years ago, I think a friend on Instagram had started like a 30-day raw vegan challenge just to try things out. And I think she was trying to share recipes, so we all just started this raw vegan thing, and it just took off from there, and I got really into the dessert aspect of it.
That's why I got into your stuff, because I think that's so eye-catching. If you look at her Instagram, it's like, what are these beautiful colors? Like reds and blues, blueberries, strawberries, avocado, amazing stuff. So that's kind of what pushed you over the line.
Yeah, that was what started it. And then, you know, from there you just realize there's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
With just plant-based food, you know, without using any animal products or anything that, you know, had to come from an animal. And it just really inspires you to dig deeper.
You got to get super creative.
You do, you have to.
That's what's fun about vegan food. It's not as simple as just, you know, throwing in some dairy or like, I mean, that stuff tastes so good and it's very easy, but you got to get super creative with plant-based stuff. And that's why I like your stuff. So today we picked four really awesome vegan desserts, and they're all 5 ingredients. Pretty much, yeah, they're all pretty much 5 ingredients. Yeah. Just about, maybe some extra toppings. And we're gonna give it to you right now.
For the berry crumble, we started with oats. If you're gluten-free, make sure your oats are gluten-free, because not all oats are, and I know that's a big thing for some people. You can make oat flour with your oats also, but you don't have to. You could really use any type of flour. I think I use just regular wheat flour. A cup of flour, a cup of oats, mix that together with about 1/3 cup of coconut oil, not melted. Make sure that's solid. 1/3 cup of sugar, any type of sugar is fine, but not liquid. Liquid will probably give you too sticky of a dough.
So with the coconut oil, it almost acted like butter. You kind of crumbled it in and created this crumbly texture. And then Celine had a great idea. Right in the moment, it was feeling a little dry.
Too dry, way too dry.
Yeah, so we actually had a very ripe banana that we took out and we just squished that in, which worked so great. But you actually reserved some of it without the banana for the top.
I did, yeah, for the top, because I wasn't sure how that would cook. I wasn't sure if it would be too wet to put on top. Yeah. So we saved maybe half a cup?
Yeah, about half a cup, and that was perfect. And then Celine had this, she brought over this Chia jam, which I didn't know existed, which is great because—
I didn't either until yesterday.
You can make jam from scratch, Chia jam. It's just raspberries, chia.
And a sweetener, liquid sweetener. Maple syrup or agave is fine.
But this was all in one, so it was one ingredient. It was perfect. So we just layered on the raspberry Chia jam, right on that, a nice smooth layer. Topped it with the crumble, and then that went in the oven at 375, covered for 20 minutes, came out of the oven, no, didn't come out of the oven. We took the lid off.
Took the cover off.
Yeah, and then got it nice and brown for another 20 minutes, and you've got delicious vegan, what are you calling those?
I'm calling it a berry crumble bar.
Berry crumble bar. Those are great. I'm sure, I haven't tried them like next day, but I feel like those are the perfect next day treat.
Chia pudding popsicles are one of my favorite treats, and my kids love them too. They're super simple to make. Chia seeds are really good for you too, which is always a bonus.
And your popsicle game in general is off the hook. The chocolate drizzle, I was like turned on by those popsicles, so we had to make those.
Anytime you can drizzle chocolate over something, I think you just have to go with it.
Yeah, and I thought it was gonna be too much. I'm like, oh, okay, it looks beautiful for the picture, but because the chia is very light and healthy, it's like, no, you need that chocolate on there.
You need the extras. So for these, we used coconut milk. I couldn't find full fat coconut milk, which is usually what I use, but you know, you're gonna have to add a little bit of water anyway, so to use the light coconut milk is totally fine. Either way, you're gonna have to thin it out a little bit if it's too thick to pour into the popsicle molds. So we used a whole can of light coconut milk. I used about 3 tablespoons of chia seeds. You have to whisk those together and let them sit for a while. Whisk it every once in a while just to check the texture. It'll thicken up in about an hour. Before you go to pour it in, add something to sweeten it up a little bit, because the coconut milk by itself tastes good, but you need it to be a little bit sweet.
It's true, coconut milk is like decent, but once you add just a little bit of sweetness, then it's like a dessert. Then it turns into like whipped cream.
It tastes good on its own,
Yeah.
you know, but it's like, you can't really tell that it's a dessert
Yes.
if you don't sweeten it just a little bit.
And it doesn't take much, and any natural sweetener, you know, honey, maple syrup, or even sugar, whatever you got.
Agave works also.
And we also added just a little bit of vanilla too, for a little extra flavor. So after that was thickened, we started layering in the popsicles, and it was pretty simple. You know, we started with a little bit of the chia, then we went in with any type of jam. We had some of that blueberry chia jam, and then just some more of the actual chia. And then once those were finished, Celine had a great idea to, you've clearly done this many times, just to swirl those up a little bit. And that actually helps everything come together. It's not just for looks. So then those go into the freezer for about 20 minutes, just so they harden a little bit. Then they come out and then they get the popsicle. You guys know how to make popsicles. Come on. Then they go back in the freezer, you know, overnight is probably best.
I'd say overnight just to be safe. You don't want to have a accident. And
yeah, and they're tricky. You gotta get it nice and frozen. And then when they come out, we took some of that, what are we calling it? A chocolate ganache? Melted chocolate.
Melted chocolate, yeah, ganache is another level.
For a lot of the recipes today, we're using melted chocolate, and it's really simple. Celine just took some chocolate chips and she did it right in a pan. You just gotta keep the heat very low.
Really as low as possible.
Yeah, because you'll burn, what's that, seasoning the chocolate? That's what you don't want?
Well, seasoning is actually when you add
water,
something cold to the hot chocolate and then
but burning
frozen.
is when you burn the chocolate.
You can burn the chocolate very easily.
So yeah, just keep it very low. And we also added a little bit of coconut oil to that as well. And we're gonna use that, I think, in 3 of the recipes. So get used to that melted chocolate. So when the popsicles came out, you just remove them from the mold. You just do a little bit of the drizzle. And then we took some freeze-dried raspberries, which we had from another recipe that's coming up soon, sprinkled those on for just a little bit of extra texture, and of course, because it looks beautiful. And there you go, Chia popsicles. And you're right, those were much better than I thought. Like, you know, they look great, and I'm thinking, okay, chia, coconut, we'll see. But when you bite into it, I still am having trouble explaining it, but it's very familiar, something I've had before, but it's just it's amazing.
The texture is awesome.
The texture.
I love it, yeah.
And you really, like, you don't have to just like lick it like a popsicle, you can eat it.
You gotta crunch into it.
You gotta crunch it. That's why the chocolate works so well. What is next?
Oreo Truffles. You might not know this, but Oreos are vegan.
Wow.
There's nothing in that from an animal.
Which makes no sense because, like, how
who
do you
would have ever thought that?
Where's the cream product coming in?
Exactly.
That's wild stuff. These were insane. Oreo Truffles, Oreo bonbons. We were struggling to figure out what to call them, but they are delicious and they're so simple.
Really simple. So we're gonna start with our Oreos, and we put them in a food processor, blended them up to a really fine crumb, almost like a dust. Add in the vegan cream cheese, which is really easy to find at pretty much any grocery store now. It used to be something that I really never saw, but now it's really common.
It's around.
Yeah, it's there. You just gotta look.
Gotta search. It's always tricky where is like that vegan section, because they always like
it's
throw
usually
it off
with like the natural stuff, or it's not always with the dairy.
Yeah.
You know, you would think it would be, but it's usually not. I think I've found it in like the organic section also.
Yeah, you
They
see,
have,
you never know where that vegan section's gonna be.
You have to search
It's tricky.
So then we added that to the food processor. Just a couple pulses is all it takes really to get it blended together. You'll see it gets really smooth really quickly. And then we made little scoops of that. There's a word for that, right? Canals, I think it is. You use the teaspoon.
It's way too advanced for my audience, okay?
I know
We made little scoops with that, okay? And then we put that in the freezer until it hardened up a little bit. And actually when it came out of the freezer, they rolled perfectly into little truffles.
That was really cool.
It's such a cool
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, that worked great. So we made little balls out of all of the scoops. And then we took that chocolate again, here it comes again, and we spooned that over. Use whatever technique you can. We took the fork and kind of spooned over the chocolate until they were coated.
Kind of just roll it back and forth to make sure it's all covered on all sides.
Yeah, and then we put that on parchment paper and we took some freeze-dried raspberries and we sprinkled those over. Put them in the fridge just to harden up a little bit, and those were insane.
So good.
Bite into those and it's that perfect creamy texture. It's one of the coolest truffle hacks because it's 2 ingredients to get such an amazing texture.
Really, I never would have expected that.
Yeah.
Oreos and cream cheese.
Yeah.
It's like,
and you just get that classic Oreo flavor and you're like, yes, childhood. Last but not least,
avocado fudge bites.
Oh.
So good. So for the avocado fudge itself, what's inside the chocolate, coconut butter would be probably the easiest thing, but it's really difficult to find, unfortunately.
I don't think I've ever found coconut. I've never used coconut butter.
Yeah, it's not that common. I think the reason I did have it was because I ordered it online from Amazon one time.
Okay.
It's really cool. It's really, interesting to use in recipes because it's not, you would think it's like coconut oil, but it's not. It has a much thicker texture and it doesn't turn to liquid because they use the entire coconut, the flesh, the oil, everything that's inside.
I feel like that's such a good ingredient to have around. But again, it's interesting that it's hard to find.
I know. I don't know
But
why.
you can make it a similar texture, which is what we did, which is combining every coconut product possible.
Everything you can find that's made from a coconut, throw it in the blender. We used shredded coconut, which if you don't want to add a sweetener to this, you can use sweetened shredded coconut.
And what Celine did was just soak that in some hot water just to kind of hydrate and fluff it up so it blended up nice. And then coconut cream.
Coconut cream.
But you took the coconut milk and you just scooped like the top layer, the really creamy portion of it.
To get that, you have to get full fat coconut milk. If you get the light coconut milk, it's not gonna have that really thick, nice layer on top of the can when you open it up. You can put it in the fridge if you want overnight to really get hard and separate really well. You don't have to. It'll be on the top of the can anyway when you open it. We used coconut oil. So you're gonna need probably 2 whole avocados. Sometimes when you open them up, there will be some brown spots or some little stringy bits, and you don't want to add those in just because the texture is not going to be right. No brown spots.
No brown spots in here.
Try to get those perfect avocados. The ones that when you open them up, you're just like,
avocado heaven. I know, it's glorious. Not always easy to find, but so nice.
When it happens, it's just the best thing.
It's a treat.
And you're gonna need a little sweetener. If you used unsweetened coconut, just don't forget that because you want to have a little bit of sweetness in there. Otherwise, you're just going to taste coconut and it's going to be boring.
This is dessert. It's be sweet. So we blended that up in the Vitamix. You could use a regular blender, no problem. And if it's getting like too creamy, it's not blending right, you can just use some of the liquid part of the coconut milk to help it on its way. And then once that was blended into that nice creamy fudgy, I don't know what you want to call that. We took that out and we spread that on a pan. So just a nice layer of that and put that in the freezer, which is very important because it needs to be frozen to cut into our little fudge bites. Once that was frozen, we took that out, let it soften just a little bit and cut it into nice little square chunks. And then of course, back to that melted chocolate. So we've got a big theme going on with the melted chocolate. We covered that in the melted chocolate and just let those set in the fridge for a little bit. And oh boy, those are great. Those are
great.
really,
When
I
you
was
cut
so
them
excited.
open, it's just that texture you see inside is amazing.
Such a treat. All of these recipes were awesome. Thank you, Celine, for showing me and now inspiring all you guys to get into vegan desserts. Vegan desserts are awesome because there is so much color, there's so much life to them, and they're really flavorful. And you don't feel like shit after you eat them, which is great. Unless you're eating like too many of those Oreo balls.
Overkill can happen with any kind of dessert.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you follow Celine at Celine Squared, her Instagram right here. Click this, or Celine Eats, her blog, which is awesome as well. If you want a little more in depth on how to make these recipes, get in the kitchen, have a good time, try out one of these treats, send us a picture, whatever you want to do.
Thanks.